Well, I woke up to go get me a cold pop. And then I thought somebody was barbecuing. I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire. Then I ran out. I didn't grab no shoes or nothing, Jesus. I ran for my life. And then the smoke got me. I got bronchitis. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brand John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
I had to turn my microphone back on. I was doing some work in the studio yesterday, John Combest.
Wow, were you? What were you doing in the studio yesterday, Brad?
Well, here's what I'm going to ask you, because this is a recurring problem. And for those of you out there listening, please don't be mad at us because of the fact that I'm doing a little bit of on-air engineering work. John, I need your feedback on something, okay?
Okay.
I won't bore with people with the problem. We have a mix-minus issue because we're using some older equipment, which is not necessarily designed for mix-minus. But John is not in the studio, and he has to hear me through a certain signal path, let's call it. And when I play things, sometimes it knocks his headphones off his head, correct?
Yeah, it's really, literally painful.
Okay, I'm going to play you something. And matter of fact, you might want to take your headphones a little bit off.
I'll take them off right now.
Well,
sure.
But not totally off, because I think this is going to be much better. You ready?
Okay, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready right now.
Here, I'll just play a quick little clip. I play this.
No stairway. Denied.
Okay, was that any better?
No, it blows my eardrums out.
Really? Seriously? I don't understand what's going on. Okay, but that's not new because I don't understand a lot of things going on. That is John Combest, Combest, and he is the guy that every single day puts a new thing up on his website. Matter of fact, multiple new things. Matter of fact, dozens of new things on his website. They all pertain to what's going on in the state of Missouri and why you should be informed of various things. Could be state government. He doesn't do a lot of city government, but he does county stuff and a lot of politics and things like that. But it's so many things that sometimes people may go, oh my God, it's too much. What it's like the Trump thing. You'll get so tired of winning. You'll get so tired of winning.
Tired of winning. We're going to be tired of winning. You're going to be tired of reading news stories.
Right. You get so many things. You'll be tired of having all the news stories. So what we do is we start the show off with this gentleman right here. Your name, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And John gives us the curated version of his website. And we start with...
In third place...
We have 2 of 3 stories in the top 3 are follow-ups. Here's a good one. A headline from Blythe Bernard of the Post-Dispatch. Board of St. Louis Public Schools introduces interim superintendent. Loses a member. I guess you could say, I think it was Conway Twitty who sang, you want a superintendent with a steady hand. You need a soup with an easy touch. Well, that's a woman named Myra Berry. She is a longtime employee of St. Louis Public Schools. In fact, a 20-year veteran. So to sum up, we had a bunch of leadership come into St. Louis from, of all places, the SeaTac area. Seattle and Tacoma came in, ran up a lot of expenses, hired a lot of friends, made up a lot of consulting contracts. And now the board of St. Louis Public Schools has decided to go with a long-term steady hand named Myra Berry. Here's her quote at the news conference Monday. And we'll come back to the news conference in a minute. Myra says, I have no illusions about the challenges we face today and ones we will face in the future. The city is rooting for us, and we are rooting for our students the way that true believers do. And I think folks who've listened to our show before, or in fact read any news or listened to any talk radio, are familiar with what happened and the mismanagement of taxpayer dollars in this district. The reason why it's a state story is because state auditor Scott Fitzpatrick has been digging into this for quite a while. And to answer Brad's question in advance, there may or may not be criminal charges against the folks who actually, I think we could all agree, stole money at at worst or misappropriated money at best. Brent, I mentioned the news conference. And the reason why I think the conference event part is important, because immediately prior to the press conference, a gentleman named Ben Conover was a member of the school board, and he made a dramatic exit. He was one who did not vote to get rid of Millicent Borishade. He says he would have voted to keep her on. He would not have voted against her. Now, it's important to know that he was appointed to the school board because he led a group called Solidarity with SLPS, and he was appointed to the board this year. And here's the money line. Quote from Mr. Conover, quote, "I am deeply worried that the board just handed our legislature," that would be the Missouri legislature, "a rubber stamp ticket to the privatization of SLPS." So Mr. Solidarity Man says this is essentially a plot for the state to privatize the St. Louis public school system, because Lord knows there's so much private money to be made in St. Louis public schools. The folks there are so wealthy that private schools can make a ton of money in St. Louis City. Anyway, a little bit of drama, but it appears as though the board says, enough of these brand new ideas from Seattle. Let's go with a steady hand.
You know, it's interesting, John. You bring that as up at number 3, and I'm reviewing my number 3. I have a similar story for my number 3. But, you know, here we go again. Don't you think it's so sad because the people are the people who are really being shortchanged are the parents and the kids? This is just...
Oh, of course, yeah.
This is just a mess. And politics aside, no matter what you think, it's just a mess. And I say again, with all the crazy stuff that's going on in St. Charles County with Francis Howell and the turnstile that is the superintendent job at Zumwalt and Wentzville and the situation in Des Moines, I read more stuff about that yesterday. What the hell's going on with our educational system? You know what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, I think there were probably, so if we take a charitable look at it, we would say that a few years ago, there were probably people that said, the situation can't get more messed up. Let's bring in people from out of town with fresh ideas and experience. It can't get any worse, can it? Well, and I think we got the answer.
Yeah, no kidding. And by the way, John, I didn't hear it until yesterday afternoon. Did you hear what is her name? What's the gal's name? I don't know if she's still head of the president anymore. Weingartner. What is it? What's her name? You know who?
Oh yeah, Randy Weingarten.
Randy Weingarten. Okay. Did you hear this clip of her addressing the No Kings thing over the weekend?
No, I'm sure she was there. I did not hear that.
OMG. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Who would ever think that a member of the public school establishment would be critical of Donald Trump?
All right. Okay, we ready for number 2?
Yeah, let's do it, Brad.
Up a notch to number 2.
Speaking of critical of Donald Trump, last week we touched on the fact that a bunch of money was headed to North St. Louis to, in fact, an Israeli company that was going to build a lithium battery plant at the corner of Adelaide and Hall Street. And we reminisced warmly of our love for that area. Well, the Trump administration said, nope, we're clawing back that money. Sorry, guys, you're not going to get that $200 million that you were counting on. Now, subsequent to that announcement, folks like Wesley Bell made a big stink about it, complained about it. What we have yesterday at Catherine Hanaway's swearing in as Attorney General. I don't want to mix stories here, and Catherine is not in the top 3, so let's just acknowledge now that Mrs. Hanaway, was installed as Missouri's newest Attorney General yesterday. So at the press conference, Kehoe, of course, takes a bunch of questions from liberals that have nothing to do with the day at hand, and he's asked about the battery plant. Kehoe says he hopes to educate the administration on how important that plant is to North City. Now, Brad, in a minute, that's your cue to talk about Kehoe and North City and maybe even Dave Sinclair. Here's the quote from Kurt Erickson in the Post-Dispatch. We certainly want to make sure the administration knows how important those jobs are to us. And Kehoe not only references the jobs, the full-time jobs that would be at that plant, but also the amount of money that would be spent in constructing the plant. So it looks like what we have here, we have a guy that has a good relationship with Trump. We know that Kehoe has supported Trump's redistricting plans. Kehoe has stayed on the right side of Donald Trump, and maybe that's the kind of thing that gives us as Missouri a little leverage. We have a lot of folks in the White House that are close to the president to say, hey, I know that green energy usually sucks and is a scam, but not this project in North St. Louis. Brad, I mentioned St. Louis before. What kind of a connection does Kehoe have to North St. Louis City?
Born and raised in North City. Used to work. Matter of fact, I think he lived near where my parents lived. My mom and dad were both North City dwellers once upon a time, both born in North City. And my Kehoe worked for Dave Sinclair. Originally started out as a porter, a lot boy, a car washer, and worked his way up through the ranks. And if you ever heard Mike Kehoe talk about this, he essentially gives probably about 80 to 90% of his success attributed to Dave Sinclair, which, and if you know the history of Dave Sinclair was a St. Louis City cop for a long time. Matter of fact, back in the day when you went to the Dave Sinclair dealership and I bought lots of cars from them, a lot of the guys there were retired police officers. Wonder how that happened, right, John?
Yeah, I have no idea. And Dave Sinclair, who ended up being South County Ford dealer, he sure looked like a policeman, didn't he? Can't you see him with a nightstick bopping some guy in the head and saying, scram?
Yeah, he looks like, and what's interesting about it, John, of the era, he looked like a lot of the cops that I worked with, And matter of fact, I don't know if he was or not, but the interesting part of it was, you know what, John, I got to take this phone call. Can I put you into the next one? What are we in the number?
Yeah,
number
go
one?
right ahead. Let's do it.
You're number one, right?
Yep.
Okay, this is an important call. Hold on.
Go ahead.
I'm going to hit you off. I'll turn my mic off, okay?
Yep. The number one.
And in number one today, I guess a follow-up to something we've talked about weekly for the past month, Cori Bush's U.S. House campaign. Now, it may surprise you that Cori Bush filed her required FEC filing, which was due last week. She submitted it one day past the deadline. Now, submitting campaign finance reports is a boring, tedious, onerous thing. It also probably indicates a campaign's level of organization, and professionalism. I should note that the story was brought to us by Joe Holloman of the Post-Dispatch. Here's the headline. Cori Bush's U.S. House campaign still has cash deficit, owes money to vendors. So Bush's previous campaign finance report, which had been filed in July, indicated that her campaign was only $344 in the hole. They had no money, but just a little bit of debt. The latest campaign filing shows that she is $628 in arrears when it comes to cash on hand for September 30th. Now, Holloman reports, both reports indicate that the campaign has an outstanding debt to vendors of $13,374, with more than $9,000 of it owed to a Las Vegas accounting firm. So to me, there's a little irony in that you're paying what is apparently a reputable accounting firm, and you can't get your books right. So to me, that's a little bit of irony. Now, that's bad enough, but you can look at a campaign and say, okay, they go into debt. It happens. You pay for video production, you pay for a bunch of stuff, and sometimes you go into debt. But as Holloman notes, quote, in a story first reported by KSDK, Bush paid about $6,390 on Friday to settle the overdue amount she owed St. Louis City for earnings and payroll taxes. The amount included penalties and interest for the 2020, 2021, and 2022 tax years. And Holloman sums it up by reminding us that Bush plans to run against U.S. Rep. Wesley Bell, a fellow Democrat who defeated her in August 2024. So to me, you have the campaign debt piece, which is bad, but people kind of forget that. If you've watched any Damon Dash interviews in the last few months, you've heard the great hip-hop mogul Damon Dash explaining bosses take losses. Maybe that's Cori Bush's plan. She goes into a little bit of debt. But what's surprising to me, I shouldn't say surprising, what's disappointing to me is that really basic stuff, like paying penalties and interest on earnings and payroll taxes, that goes all the way back to 2020. Brad, there are, I'd say, tens of thousands of people in the metro region that consider themselves Cori Bush fans. And Cori's people would probably say that if you expand that number nationwide, it's hundreds of thousands of people that consider themselves fans of Cori Bush. It doesn't seem as though among all the people that Cori chooses to surround herself with, or maybe who are just hangers-on, I don't understand how there's not people around Cori that have enough sense and have enough directness to tell her, Cori, you got to pay your earnings and payroll taxes. Are you up to date on this? What? You're going to run against Wesley Bell? Have you paid all your debt first? Don't you know Wesley Bell's team is probably going to look into every nook and cranny, and pardon the expression, your arrears, to see if you owe anybody money? Brad, I don't get how there's nobody around Cori with enough common sense to push her on this stuff before she announces that she's running against Wesley Bell.
Well, the crazy part of this is, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, wasn't there the big controversy about the fact that she was paying her then boyfriend a huge amount of money to supply security services? And wasn't that?
Yeah, that was one of, there have been several controversies, but yeah, the notion of paying her husband to provide security. Now, she would say that with the letter of the law, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it certainly doesn't look good. I don't think anybody reasonable would tell you that that looks good.
I don't know. Crazy stuff. Okay, John, I'm doing Audible here. One of my family members has taken ill. We'll do the break here. I may or may not come back. So can you just...
Okay, hey, no problem, Brad. Just you can text me or let us know when we come back from break, okay?
Yeah, well, let's just put it this way. If we don't come back from break and we're running a best of, that means I had to get out of here early. But otherwise, I'm going to take the break. I'm going to make the phone call, but stay with me, so don't go away.
Okay, I will, Brad.